Thank you, and a belated welcome to Ladies of Another View. I'm here today with Lori and Andrea. I was putting the names together, Lori, yeah. And I'm Patty. And thank you for staying with us through our special report. It's part 6, China Conquest, Inside Job. And we're connecting the dots because what's happening today has roots in what happened several presidents ago. And the news kind of just, there's a lot of amnesia in the news. So we're doing these special reports. If you haven't seen all of them, I encourage you to go to the Beck News website. It's the China Conquest Inside Job and catch up on anything you might have missed. We still will, we have 4 more to go, so stay with us on that. And speaking of connecting the dots, I have a guest on today who's a teacher in the Dallas area, and he writes for a lot of publications. The Federalist, the American Conservative, Imaginative Conservative, and he's the editor of the Everyman, and he connects a lot of the dots for us so we know what's going on in education. Welcome to the show, Auguste Meyrat. You get that
Good
right,
afternoon.
Meyrat. Well, thank you for coming to the show, and a couple of your articles caught my attention. And one was about that when we bring down the standards, that we are actually hurting minorities. You obviously agree with that?
Yeah, it's a measure to close the achievement gap between different groups of students. And, well, it's obviously very easy to do. So if you have students who are struggling, and I try to get away from race. I mean, I feel like that's kind of something we impose on it just by organizing by race. It's just there are students who struggle academically and there are students who do pretty well. But yeah, when you just start, grading them differently just so you can make it look like they're learning more or they're doing better, and it looks like you're closing the achievement gap, in reality, you're not. You're not serving them. And a lot of these strategies that they use for students who struggle are brought up to students who are actually achieving. And so those students too are being deprived by being given kind of busy work, easy stuff. And so the grades just stop meaning anything. But school leaders and educators will pat themselves on the back because it looks like they closed the achievement gap and we've reached the ultimate equity, which is a big goal and kind of it's very trendy in a lot of school districts, including down here in Texas.
They're kind of doing this in a lot of different ways, right? That we have an article where they're taking away the essential skills from graduation requirements for high schoolers. So they're changing the graduation requirements, they're changing the grading scales, they're doing a lot of things to kind of rewrite how they rank and how they attribute growth to the kids, but also how they attribute growth to the schools.
Yeah, I mean, they want to get away from standardized testing. They want to get away from SAT. They want to get away from ACT, AP tests, any kind of concrete accountability. I say they, I mean, again, these are either school leaders, they're teachers or education consultants or even politicians. They want to substitute those things for things that are a lot more relative. Like instead of having a standardized test at the end of the year, you would have a portfolio that the teacher's going to look at. Instead of having strict graduation requirements that require a certain amount of years and credits, your graduation, you went through these major competencies. They call it competency-based education. So to me, as a teacher, I've seen it. The pendulum swings back and forth with a lot of these different types of innovations, I guess. And it's all gimmicks. I mean, it really is a lot of smoke and mirrors just to cover up for the fact that some students aren't being served, they're not making improvements, and there's some real issues to work through. And the key word here is work. I think it's a lot easier to give a kid an iPad or a tablet instead of, knuckling down and doing reading drills and stuff like that, which is in some cases pretty necessary.
And that's the point you're making, and like the actually putting in the hard work. I mean, because kids not turning in assignments and things like that, there's no accountability, and they just kind of let it slide by. And then, I mean, kids are pretty smart. They understand that if I'm not held accountable, And these kids are our future. I mean, what is going to happen when they go out into the workforce and they do have to be held accountable, but that's never been taught to them.
Well, I think you see it with my generation. So I'm a millennial. I'm 36, and but you start seeing able-bodied adults with college degrees struggling with basic skills like buying property, working a normal job, caring for others that are human beings, not like fur babies. Those types of things. And I mean, we can kind of laugh about it, but really there's some serious omissions and just, missing parts to their upbringing. And so I do think there's some serious consequences, and I think it's going to get worse. I mean, a lot of this ties in with our tech addiction. It becomes a huge crutch. So I think, yeah, if you kind of have a weaker education and you're let off the hook and you're not held accountable, you don't grow up and you can't become independent.
We're going to talk about the tech addiction in the next segment, so I don't want to go into that quite yet, and we have just about a minute. In this segment, I want you to talk about The Dumbest Generation Grows Up. It's the name of a book, and you have talked with the author. Ouch, that sounds terrible. What is going on?
I feel attacked as a millennial.
Luckily, he's a millennial, too. I can't even say that. Millennial, yes.
Yeah, it attacks my generation. I actually included that in my book review. I said, some of us are okay. No, I mean, his big thing was just these millennials all going to college, all becoming radicalized by the college atmosphere. And beyond that, it's not just their politics, but even just general competency, like just academic ability is still diminishing. And I mean, technology has a big part of that. Politics has a big part of that. His focus is mainly college. I mean, he was a professor. And I mean, I see the parallels in high school and middle school. I mean, kind of where I work. So.
And what grades do you teach?
So I mainly teach juniors, but I also teach sophomores too. And I do AP Lang in composition, which is basically rhetoric.
And I know you have young children. Do you have 3 children? Do I have my number right?
Yes, I do. My eldest is 5.5. My second is about to turn 4, so he's still 3. And then my youngest is 2.
Welcome back to Ladies of Another View on Beck. And we've been talking with Auguste Meyrat. He is a teacher in the high school in the Dallas area of Texas. And there's a lot that he's seeing that we need to really pay attention and address. And we were talking, welcome back to the show, Auguste.
Hi.
Not only is a teacher, but he's a writer for a lot of conservative publications, including The Federalist. And I came across several of his articles. And I want to ask you a question about the last segment when you talked about lowering standards, not doing our students any favor. Why is this happening? Who is it supposed to be benefiting? The students, the teachers, the schools?
I mean, I think the school leadership mainly. So that it looks like that they're bridging these achievement gaps and narrowing them. Teachers can benefit too if, they take their cues and learn not to score too much or be too hard on the kids. Obviously, the kids are the ones who lose out. Although at the time they think, oh, they hit the jackpot, they don't have to work too hard. But they're not really learning, and this is something that sticks with you, and it's hard to realize it until way after the fact.
And Auguste, you did write another article as being a teacher that you want to send your kids to screen-free schools. I mean, we're watching how. There was a time when you were supposed to limit your kids watching TV to an hour or 2 a day, and now they're saying, with technology in school now and kids seeing the iPad all the time, and then having phones, their technology, watching screens can be 7-8 hours a day. And I read an article about the actual thinning of a child's brain, their cerebral cortex, that lining, which they don't even see until usually after like age 60. What do you have to say about what all this excess screen time can do to kids?
I think it's terrible. And I guess the biggest objection I always meet with, well, don't they always say that about the newest thing? They said that about TV, or they said that about radio or something. I don't know. It's different. I mean, even for me, again, I'm a millennial. I'm 36. There's a pretty big gap between me and the next generation, like the kids I teach, or even young college graduates and stuff. And really, that breaking point is the smartphone. And so they have a harder time interfacing with reality, and their social skills are never developed, and they're not very observant. And so a lot of development and a lot of just interacting with reality is compromised by this habit. And for kids, it's extremely bad. And, for me, I live in a pretty nice area. I work in a pretty nice school district. But I also, these are districts that are pretty tech friendly, and the kids end up spending a lot of time on devices, or this is used as an incentive. And even when it's not, I mean, the parents just let them have it, and the kids, the schools let them kind of use them. And so I just want to make sure my daughter, who's going to be starting school next year, just have an experience without that. Kind of the experience I had. I guess I was like the last kind of class to really get through school before this became the norm, before screens just became ubiquitous.
Are we seeing school systems outlawing screens and deciding to use books? Because we had somebody on a while back who did a study and said, you actually learn better with writing on the page as opposed to screen time, that you retain that information better. Is it possible that schools are going to start to see the light and turn away from this? And are schools already doing that?
I think so. I mean, my dad is French, and so I have that little line of connection there. And France, they've outlawed it. The public schools in France, they don't let them use phones or have them out. Interestingly enough, this past week, and I wrote an article just about it, about Fairfax. So Fairfax made two decisions, or many votes, but two of them kind of were front and center. One was about dead naming and misgendering kids were going to be punished more seriously. And that's what got a lot of attention, and it was bad, and I wrote about it. But the other decision that was made was about restricting phone use. And that's really where a lot of these kind of influences come if we're talking about, gender ideology and stuff like that. So yeah, I think school districts, even very progressive ones, are starting to realize just the impact that the screen is making. It's just hard to accommodate kids. I mean, just academics aside, although academics should be front and center, but move that to the side. And you were just talking about the social, emotional, mental health of our students. It's just hard to work with them if they got this drug. I mean, if they're addicted to the screen and just getting this, stream of influences, telling them things that aren't age appropriate and are leading them towards dark places.
Yep, that's a really good point. And with COVID, we sent the kids at home. They learned specifically on tablets. And then when we did send them to school, we put masks on their face, so these young kids, they can't even read social cues anymore. Not only, I mean, they don't have that, they don't know how to socially interact. They've lost all those kind of things. And now you're saying some of these school districts are trying to get the phones out, hopefully going back to some kind of books. Can we bring this back around?
It's hard. And I mean, I would say before COVID, I could take up a kid's phone, or I could, tell my class, we're not going to have the phones out, or you leave them up front. And it was accepted. There wasn't really a fight about that. I tried to do that this past year. The kids came back from kind of a lot of the shutdowns and virtual learning stuff, and it was bad. A lot of kids are very emotionally attached to their phones now. They've been using these things for hours on end every day. So now, I mean, you are really dealing with people that suffer real withdrawals if you take away their phone.
I mean, you're almost kind of explaining that the phone has become like a pacifier for children.
Mm. But what Auguste is saying is amazing.
Serious pacifier, I mean, it's a drug. That's really how I feel about it.
You know what you just said, that is shocking, because it's so clear. There was before COVID and after COVID, and you in the classroom saw a dramatic change on screen time. I'm hoping, thank you for writing about this, and I hope this message gets out there more and more, that maybe we'll be more like France in this country and start outlawing it, realizing it's not in the best interest of children. Thank you, Auguste. I'll continue to keep an eye on your writing, and we'll, I'm sure, have you on again down the road.